Hey, 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 how's it going out there? Do you know what you're listening to? This is the Tim Laskus Show. And I'm Tim Laskus. And so you better get ready because this is episode 25. And today's guest is Daniel Gefen. Daniel, he started and grew multiple companies from scratch, such as Jet Answering Services, Jet Virtual Offices, and Jet Offices. He's a podcast host where he picks people's notes. No, not their noses. He picks their brains because he has an awesome podcast called Can I Pick Your Brain? And he has had tons of interviews on his show with some of the most successful people out there. Daniel is a business mentor, a speaker, a writer, and a proud father of 3 little rascals, he says. And let me tell you, you better get ready because he brings some awesome value to the show. Enjoy.
The Tim Laskus Show, in search of entrepreneurial gold. Tim digs deep into the minds of his guests, entertaining, down to earth, and informative. Now, here's your host, Tim Laskus.
Welcome, everyone. Today's featured guest is Daniel Gefen. Daniel, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Tim, for having me.
Hey, are you ready for the first on-air Tim Laskus Show lobotomy?
Yeah!
And the reason I said that is because you'd sent that Facebook note out there about having me pick your brain. You're going to get your brain picked on my show, so I had to come up with something.
Well, my show is called Can I Pick Your Brain? So I always use that as my, like, when I go on someone else's show, I say I'm getting my brain picked because usually I'm the one picking people's brains. So
yeah, so you get to revert. You get to be on the opposite end.
Yeah,
well, you know, lobotomies used to be very popular in the early 1900s, and the neurosurgeons would go in and scoop out your frontal lobes with a spoon, and then they would say, "Okay, you're ready to go. You're not acting crazy anymore. We don't need medication or anything. We just scoop them out and send you on your way."
You know, Tim, I'm really glad that I skipped lunch today. Thank you for that.
Well, earlier you were telling me that you're quite the pool shark. Not only you're a pool shark, but you also love Shark Tank. So tell the listeners a little bit about yourself aside from business.
Well, I'm happily married for just over 10 years now, which is, I think that's like a huge success in itself nowadays. 'Cause, right? I have 4 little children, very cute, 3 boys and 1 girl. They keep me very busy. And I play tennis when it's nice outside, which is most of the time because I live in the Middle East. And I play pool. I have a pool table in my office, so play a bit of pool. And like you said, I like to eat my dinner in front of an episode of Shark Tank. So yeah, that's pretty much what I do for fun. Go to the beach as well. Yeah, the
beach. Man, I'm a beach person. I love that. So you like swimming with the sharks and watching Shark Tank. Is that right?
Yeah.
Now, you said you had 4 kids, and you said they're very cute. How come nobody says, I have 4 kids, one of them is ugly as crap, but the other 3 are cute?
Well, one of them is ugly, but I can't say that about my son. I'm just kidding. They're all beautiful.
That's funny. That's great. Well, Daniel, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself professionally. What are you currently working on?
Wow. Right. Okay. So right now I have my own podcast show called Can I Pick Your Brain, where I pick the brains of successful entrepreneurs. I've had the smartest man alive on my show who basically hacked into NASA when he was 13 years old, which was an insane story. And he also plans on living forever, which, like, I couldn't sleep that night because of the things that he basically said on the show. I've had the leading FBI hostage negotiator, and he talked about negotiation tactics in business and in life, which was really cool. I've had Jay Abraham, the marketing legend, and a whole host of other awesome guests. It's just been absolutely incredible. I've been doing that for just over a year now. Also just got rated the top 26 podcast shows to listen to in 2017. So I was really honored to get that. And other than that, right now I've launched a new company called getfeatured.com. so gets people featured on podcast shows. So, anybody who's looking to get massive exposure for their brand and they want to get on a bunch of the top rated shows. So they hire us and we help them to come up with their story, come up with their message and their call to action. And we also get them scheduled. We pitch them to the hosts and we pretty much do everything so that all they need to do is show up and pretty much be a guest on the top shows.
Wow. Well, the podcast landscape is like the Wild West right now. It's a big land grab.
Yeah.
It is a huge opportunity for podcasters and for guests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's massive. It's absolutely massive.
Now, you mentioned you had the smartest man alive on your show. Did he say what his IQ score was?
Yeah, it was 197.
What?
Yeah, it's insane. And to put that in context, Einstein was 165. So just to give you an idea.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know if your listeners know there's a show on TV called Scorpion. So it's one of the top rated shows right now. It's so the guy is called Walter O'Brien, the guy who I interviewed, and it's actually based on his life. It's actually real. It's based on his life and all the things that he's got up to.
Wow. Well, to give everyone also another perspective of his IQ, the average range of intelligence for just, if you fall in the average range, your IQ score would be between 85 and 115. And then every standard deviation of 15 more would put you above. So he's like 27 standard deviations above the average. So most everybody out there is listening probably falls in the average range, 85 to 115.
Right.
But this guy's off the charts.
Off the charts, yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Now, you also talked about having this guy who's the leading FBI negotiator. At one point, I worked as a psychologist in the prison. And before we actually started our first day, they did all this training. And then they said, oh, by the way, don't go out there yet. Here, you need to sign this paper. And typically, I just kind of sign whatever. But I decided to read what it was. And it says, if by chance you happen to be taken hostage, we will not negotiate for your release.
Oh my goodness.
And I thought, what? How crazy is that? What am I doing? They waited to the last minute to have me sign that and tell me. I was a nervous character, let me tell you.
That's funny. That's hilarious.
Well, Daniel, since you've been doing all this great stuff with Get Featured and having your own podcast, what are some tips that you have for our entrepreneur listeners out there, an actual resource or maybe some advice that you've been given along the way?
Well, I guess, let me tell you a little bit about sort of my background and kind of how I got to where I am now, because I feel like, for me at least, when I see people in the entrepreneurial space and you see where they are and you go, wow, how did they, I always ask myself, how did they get there? Because people watching Gary Vaynerchuk, for example, they get really inspired and they're like, wow, he's built, tens of millions of dollars, like a $50 million company and wine library. And he's got all these fans and he speaks on stage. But the thing is what a lot of people don't do is they don't go back to the person's, history and see, well, where did they come from and how did they get there? So one of the things that I did was I went and I searched for Gary Vaynerchuk's first ever video, right? And let me tell you, it sucked. It was pretty bad, right? And the reason why I did that is because I always like to remind myself that everybody has a beginning. Everybody has a place that they got to start from, right? So Steve Jobs started from somewhere. Like he had to start from scratch. Right. And everybody, it doesn't matter who you are, Tony Robbins, Richard Branson, whoever your particular, idol is or your celebrity, whoever you look up to, they started somewhere. And for me, I'm always fascinated by the beginning of the story, not just the end of the story, but what's the beginning. So for me, the beginning of my story, I think my story really started when I was very, very young. And I had this thing that I had to get what I wanted. Like I tell you one story, for example, from when I was about 3 or 4 years old. My parents took me to a forest. We went far off in the woods somewhere. And I suddenly decided that I wanted chocolate. And so I turned around to my parents and I said, I want chocolate. And my mother said, oh, Daniel, we don't have any chocolate on us. We didn't bring chocolate. And, I'm sorry, but we have something else. We have an apple. I don't want an apple. I want chocolate. And my parents were like, well, we don't have chocolate. We'll get you chocolate when we get home. We'll try and find. No, I want chocolate. I want chocolate. I want chocolate. And I literally didn't stop saying, I want chocolate for probably about an hour straight. Like, you would have killed me. Until my mother was like hopeless. She couldn't calm me down. She couldn't stop me. And she just said, okay, fine. We'll get you chocolate. We'll get you. And they had to literally get out of the forest, get into the car, and drive around to find some place somewhere that had chocolate, because we were out in the country. And finally, I got my chocolate. And that kind of played through my life, where in high school, I didn't want to do the work. I if I wasn't interested in the subject, like, I'm not going to do it just because you told me to do it. And so I would get bored and I would get in trouble because I would be the class clown and make everybody laugh. And, the teachers would go crazy and they would punish me. And it was like, pretty much what I would call the early stages of being an entrepreneur, because an entrepreneur needs to pretty much like be in control, right? People ask, what's the definition of an entrepreneur? For me, an entrepreneur is somebody that cannot work for anyone else. They just can't. It's not that they don't want to. Like, sometimes, to be honest with you, Tim, sometimes I think, wow, wouldn't it be great if I just like went to work in an office somewhere and just did my hours and got my paycheck, and that was it. Like, because as an entrepreneur, you are literally always switched on. Like, I'm up till 2 a.m. thinking of new ideas or like doing something. I'm always, I could be sitting on a nice beach somewhere with my family and I'm still like, my brain is just going, it's going and going. But it's not that I don't necessarily want to work for someone else. I can't work for someone else, right? So what happened was to make a very long story short, is I got married at a young age. I got married at around 22. I dropped out of high school, so I had no degree and I had no work experience or anything. So let's just say my wife's parents were a little bit worried about, like, how is this guy gonna, support our daughter? But
for sure.
You know what I'm saying? So, but I ended up getting my first job, and one of the things that I could say things about myself that I know I'm not good at. Like, I'm lazy by nature, and a whole lot of other things. But one of the things that I'm really good at is I could talk and I could sell and I could persuade. And so this first job that I got, they actually offered me $60,000, and I ended up negotiating to a 6-figure salary. And that was my first ever, that's like the first ever like real job that I had. It was in California, and that's where my wife is from California. So we were literally living the life, and all of a sudden 2008 came along, and pretty much, I mean, I don't really need to say much more, but I got laid off and I needed a job. So I went into mortgages, selling mortgages, and literally like 4 months on commission only, and I didn't make a dime. Like, you couldn't give a mortgage away. Like, everybody, like, people wanted a mortgage, you couldn't do anything, right? So like, fast forward a couple of months and I was broke. Like, I literally didn't have a penny to my name. And I remember the day when I get a knock at the door, and it was the landlady. Her name was Olga, this big Russian woman. And I open up the door and she goes, Mr. Gefen, you need to leave. And so I remember I said, well, what do you mean I need to leave? Like, what do you mean? And she said, well, you haven't paid the rent in 3 months now. you need to get out. And I said, but I have a wife and a baby. At the time I had my first child. And I said, but I have a wife and a baby. Like, what am I supposed to do? And she said, not my problem. And so we ended up getting kicked out. And so I went from 6 figures to completely flat broke. And we had to move into my parents-in-law's house. Now, for those of you listening that, are married, the worst thing ever is to live with your in-laws, at least for me. Like, it was like handing my balls on a plate. It was really bad. And it lasted about 3 weeks. And it was basically either I was going to get divorced or like I needed to do something, because I was feeling really depressed. I was feeling sorry for myself. I felt so guilty that I wasn't able to provide for their daughter, and I was eating off of their table and sleeping, under their roof. And I'm supposed to be the man. Like, I'm supposed to be the guy who provides. And especially as a natural born entrepreneur, the worst thing is when you feel completely powerless and out of control. So I did the last thing that I wanted to do, and that was that I picked up the phone and I called up my dad in England. And the thing is with my dad is that we don't speak very often. We have like one of those kind of relationships where, he might call me up for one of 3 reasons. Either someone got married, someone had a baby, or someone died. So so whenever he calls me, I hope it's one of the first 2, because, otherwise someone died. So I call up my dad, and with my tail between my legs, I kind of said, hey Dad, I kind of need your help. I'm broke. And so my father being a dad, he said, well, I'll give you a job in my store, like, come and live in England, and I'll give you a job. So just to give you like a little context, my dad has a grocery store. It's like one of these 7-Elevens. So it's like a really small store where they just sell the basics like eggs and milk and cereals. And so we moved to England, and I ended up working in my dad's store as a cashier. And I hated every single minute. I was like, oh, get me out of here. Like, oh, I can't do this anymore. But like, I had no choice because I had to provide for my wife and my child. And every single day, I kid you not, I had to like roll out of bed and literally like, drag my feet there and then look at the clock. And I remember like sitting there, and for those of you listening who you've, currently got a job that you hate, right? You kind of sit there and you look at the clock, and it's so slow. My God, is it only 12 o'clock? Oh my goodness, when is this going to end? Let me get home. And it was terrible. But after a year, I literally said to my wife, I said, honey, if I have to serve milk and eggs to another person, I think I'm going to take a shotgun and just shoot everyone in the store and then shoot myself. It was so like, I can't do this anymore. And so my wife said, you know what? Why don't you go and start your own business? I'm behind you. I'm supporting you. Just whatever it takes. Just like, we've been broke before. So what? Let's just do it. And so I told my dad, I said, thank you so much for the job, but I'm going to go start my own business. And we went into debt. Like, that's pretty much what happened. I started my company, and we lived in debt for a first year. And it was tough. Like, I started my first company. It was a call center. So at the beginning, it was just me. So I had to do everything. Like, I literally was the secretary. I was the sales guy. I was the bookkeeper. I was the debt collector. I was the customer service, like department, like I was everything. And like, to cut a long story short, I basically, I realized that I needed to hire someone. So I remember when I started hiring people, it was really difficult because everybody had like, different personalities, and I wasn't used to working with other people. And it became really difficult. But eventually what happened was I found someone who can literally run the business. And she was just amazing. Like, she knew how to work with people. Like, my skill set is to sell and to grow the business. And really, like, managing people's not my strong suit. So I found someone who could do that, and it was amazing. But then one day I get a phone call from her, and she calls me up and she goes, "Hi, Daniel, I'm really sorry to do this, but I can't come into work." And I said, "Oh my goodness, are you okay? Like, are you going to be here tomorrow? Are you going to be here next week?" And she said, "No, I'm sorry. I can't come back to work. My boyfriend broke up with me and I almost committed suicide, and I went to a shrink and he told me that I can't work for 6 months. I'm really sorry to do this to you, but I won't be coming back to work." So I'm like, oh my God, like, what am I going to do? Like, she was literally running my business, and I relied on her, like, to run my business, you know, to like manage everything. And then I kid you not, the same day, the landlord, the people who owned the office that I was renting, they called me up and they said, "Oh, I'm really sorry to do this to you, Mr. Gefen, but we're actually selling the building, so we need you to get out within 2 weeks." And I had all this staff and all this equipment, and I had hundreds of clients that were relying on us to answer their calls for them. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, I've got no head receptionist, so I don't even know how to manage this. And now I've got no office, and I don't know how I'm going to move everything. And I remember I went home like a little boy with my tail between my legs and like feeling really sorry for myself and just, in a really bad place. And I went into my room and I closed the door and I kind of sat on my bed and I picked up the phone and I called up my business mentor. His name was Gavin. And for about 20 minutes, I just literally like emptied myself out to Gavin. Like, "Oh, I just can't do this anymore. I've worked so hard for this, and I've built up the company, and now, finally I've got it to a point where it's actually profitable, and now all this crap is happening, blah, blah, blah." And like, I finish, and then he stops and he goes, "Have you finished, Daniel?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay, here's my advice to you. Shut up, get off your sorry little ass, and go do something about it. Like, stop feeling sorry for yourself. You're an entrepreneur. Think out of the box. Think of a way to get to do this. Like, think of a way out. Like, this is what you're good at." And he hangs up the phone. And I am literally like sitting there in shock. Like, did he just do that to me? I can't believe that. Where's the sympathy, right? And I realized I learned a very big lesson there as well, is that a good mentor isn't there to sympathize. A good mentor is there to help you, to like get you out of your funk, right? And so I got up and I said, he's right. Like, I need to figure this out. And I started thinking of different ways, out of this. Like, what do I do? And then the craziest idea came to my head, and I thought, oh my God, this is so crazy. It can't work, but like, I'm going to try because there's nothing else, right? And the idea was to outsource my company to one of my competitors, which was like insane, right? But I thought, okay, let me try this out. So I ended up interviewing my competitors one by one until I finally found the right one. And I ended up outsourcing the whole company. And I remember the day, Tim, when I fired all of my staff. I gave up my office. I took my laptop and my phone. I drove to a nearby hotel and I sat in the hotel lobby and I literally just worked on growing my business because I did not need to do anything because I outsourced every single aspect of it. And
wow.
Literally, I mean, this is now 7 years ago and I haven't looked back. I mean, it's just been amazing. And actually, funny thing as well is I ended up going back to that hotel every single day for about a year. So for a whole year, I literally worked out of a hotel lobby. In fact, people thought that I was the hotel manager. So I had people coming up to me going, "Excuse me, can I take my lunch break now?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I don't work here. I mean, well, I do work here, but I don't work for the hotel. So I don't know." And I remember like a year went by and finally like the manager came up to me and he goes, "Excuse me, sir, can I have a word?" I said, "Sure, what's it about?" And he said, "Well, are you a guest at the hotel?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Okay, well, I mean, do you live here? Because I've seen you here every single day for the last, I don't know how long. what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm running my business. I'm running my business from here. And he kind of looked at me and goes, do you mind running your business somewhere else? And that was the end of it.
Oh, giving you the boot, Daniel.
He gave me the boot.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you were a permanent fixture there. And I was taking notes as you were telling this wonderful story. And so some of the things I pulled out of that is for the listeners is to get a mentor and to stop feeling sorry for yourself. You need to pick yourself up when things are going to the side or going down, and think out of the box. Many times we think that there's only one way to do something, but often there are many different ways. And as an entrepreneur, you're going to wear many hats. As Daniel was saying, you're going to have to do everything: the sales, the marketing, the website design, the going to the post office. You name it, you're going to be doing it, and get used to that.
Yep.
But as time goes on, learn to hire people who can do some of those jobs that you don't need to do, where your time would be better spent doing some of the core things for your company. But yeah, it sounds like you, Daniel, when your back was up against the wall several times, you were able to come on top, and I think that's an incredible, powerful story. Now, Daniel, when you were growing up, what were some of the messages you received about money and business? Did you ever have that talk with your family about how to save, how to make money?
I'm really glad you brought that up, Tim. I grew up with a very unhealthy mindset around money. My father always kind of complained about money. He was very, very scared. There was a lot of fear around money. He never wanted to go to work because he was always scared about what would be. Like he never knew till today. He doesn't know how much he earns. Like, he just doesn't want to know. And I even remember when we used to go on vacation, he would complain the whole time about how expensive the vacation was. And I remember being like this little kid going, if it's so expensive and you're so nervous, like, why don't we just stay at home? Like, I don't mind. Like, I prefer to have a dad who's happy than to have a dad who's nervous and angry and upset. And, my parents would get into fights over money. Like, I remember my mother would on the way when she drove us back from school, she would tell us, hey kids, don't tell dad that I went shopping today, just, because I don't want him to know that I spent money. And we would get home and we would watch my mother tell my father, because he would say, oh, that looks like a new dress. Did you just buy that today? And she would say, oh no, this is old. No, this is, And so I would see lying, I would see anger, I would see fear. And so my upbringing around money was very unhealthy. And so what I do now with my own children is I try to teach them healthy habits and healthy mindsets. So, I'll tell my son, my oldest son is only 8, but he's already like, Daddy, how much money do you make? He'll like, I'll come home and suddenly he'll ask me, how much money do you make? Or how much money does this cost? And, if I save, $1 a day, how long will it take me to get an iPad? Like, he's cute like that. But I try to just, I try to tell him that, first of all, happiness isn't from money. Like, money can buy things, but real happiness comes from relationships and health and giving and just enjoying life. And I just try to teach him, money comes and goes. Like, people die, and when they're dead, they never come back. When my grandfather died and I saw the box that he was lying in, and I realized that that's the last time I'm ever going to see him, and I'm never going to speak to him ever again. That's like, when you're in that moment, money doesn't mean any, ask anybody. I don't care how much money they've got. What would they pay to bring back a loved one? The amount would be any amount. Like, give me a checkbook. I will write the amount that you want. I don't care what it takes. I will get them back. But money comes and goes. You lose money and you can make it back again.
Yeah, that is so true, because we can't take it with us. Cannot take it with us. And if you're rich in relationships, that's all you need in life to be happy.
100%.
And I'll tell you, my wife's family is from Nicaragua up in the mountains, and they don't make a lot of money, but they are wealthy in land, and they have a big farm, and they have lots of family that live in the general area, and they're as happy as can be. And that's, to me, that is life. That's living life to the fullest. It's not about the dollar. And many times when we're working so hard and we miss out on, those games that our kids are on various teams and sports and doing activities at school, and we miss that. I mean, that's stuff we can't get back. So yeah, definitely put your focus on relationships first and money second. Well, Daniel, looking back, what's been the most fulfilling moment in your entrepreneurial journey?
Oh, wow. Look, the first thing that comes to my mind in terms of what's been fulfilling is my wife. Because I'll be very honest with you, like without my wife, like I don't think I would have fought so hard to become success. Like I really believe that having a supportive wife is so crucial. And for those of you that are not married, number one is when you do look for that spouse, look for someone who's going to support you. A lot of people, they get married and they've got a dream and they find out later on that their spouse doesn't support that dream. They may want security over risk. And as an entrepreneur, we don't favor security. We favor, we want to just go out there and try. Like we want to take risks. And if you marry someone who they don't have the stomach for it, that's going to really, really play up in your marriage. And when I'm in a fight with my wife about something, it affects my business. When you're in a fight with your wife or when you're in a fight with your husband, it really affects your business. So for me, it's so crucial to have a supportive wife and supportive people, like surrounding yourself with supportive people, like, because people could be negative, people could be jealous. There could be people out there who will tell you that you can't do whatever it is that you're trying to do. They'll try and talk you out of it. They'll try and put you down. They'll make fun of you. And you know what? I don't need that. Like, I beat myself up enough growing up. When I was a teenager, I was emotionally abused and bullied in school. And so I had enough of the voices in my head telling me I'm not good enough. And I worked really hard on myself to change those voices to be more positive. And it took me a long time, but finally I can honestly say that I'm really kind to myself. I'm caring, I'm loving to myself. I talk positively to myself. And I just don't need people on the outside talking me down. And so I surround myself with people who are positive, who, just want the best for me. You know what I mean, Tim?
Yeah, many times we're our own worst critics.
Yeah.
And if we're able to be easy on ourselves and to surround ourselves with others who support us in our journey and in our quest to be an entrepreneur, man, you can't ask for any more than that. Well, Daniel, you have been a fantastic guest. We're running out of time, but before we go, I want you to tell the listeners where they can find you online and a website that they can go to connect with you.
Sure. Okay. So if you are interested in hearing me interview successful entrepreneurs and you want to hear more about my story as well, you can go to danielgefen.com. That's Daniel Gefen. Gefen is with one F. So it's danielgefen.com. And if they want to find me on social, so Facebook, it's Daniel Gefen. I'm the guy with a picture of me with a smile in front of a mic. So you can find me there. And also, if any of you listeners want to get featured on podcast shows, it's getfeatured.com. And here's what I'll do as well for your listeners, Tim. I'm going to give a 50% discount to your listeners. So that's huge. Literally half off of any of the packages on our website. So if you go to getfeatured.com and you go and you sign up, if you just tell us that Tim Laskis, the Tim Laskis Show, that's where you that's where you heard about us, we will give you a 50% discount. So
that is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing as well, by the way, Tim, is I really want people. Even if you don't go to my website, even if you don't care to listen to my show, and even if you don't want to get featured or you don't think it's the right time, I just want to hear from you. If you're listening to this and you just want to sort of talk to somebody about anything, you want help with your business, or you want help with direction, or whatever it is, I'm really, really, really happy to hear from people. So if you want to send me an email, you could just send me an email. It's daniel@getfeatured.com. That's daniel@getfeatured.com. And just say hi and introduce yourself. And I'm really happy to hear from you guys. And I will respond to the email.
That's incredible. Thank you. So again, danielgefen.com or getfeatured.com or daniel@getfeatured.com. He's there. Check him out. Thank you, Daniel. You've been a great guest, a lot of fun, and I look forward to keeping an eye on your continued journey and success.
Thank you so much, Tim. It's been such an honor to be on your show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Want more entrepreneurial tips? Go to timlaskis.com.